guys, and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm talking about my labour and delivery story with my little baby girl. Aren't I? Yeah? So I revealed in my last video that her name is Heidi, which I'm just so happy about, and it just fits her so well. So if you haven't watched that video, definitely do, because it was just the most amazing feeling to be able to share her with you. And you know, like I mentioned, that my pregnancy videos are now to an end where I can focus on postpartum, but I wanted to talk to you about my labour and delivery story with her, because it definitely didn't go as planned. I think on my 37-week pregnancy update I mentioned that we had a birth plan in place, didn't even stick to anything except from one thing, but that just goes out of the window when you actually go into labour. So I'm just going to start like dead on the beginning, because I don't know how long we've got while she's going to be settled, but I obviously filmed my 39-week pregnancy update and uploaded it to my channel, and I think even in that I mentioned that I doubted that I was going to go into labour kind of anytime soon. I thought it'd be optimistic to think that I'd be having her on my due date, but lo and behold, literally that night, so I filmed that video in like the evening, and then that night I went to bed, but I kept getting up every like 2 hours. So this was the night of the 5th of December going into the 6th of December, so that kind of crossover of night. I went to bed like normal, Rich was at work, and I kept getting up every like 2 hours to pee, which to be honest was nothing new, because I was so big towards the end of pregnancy. You would have seen from my 39-week kind of belly shot that I just got so big, and she got so big as well, that I was just up and down going to the toilet like every 2 minutes. But that night it was like every 2 hours I was going to the toilet, and it was such broken sleep. And then when I went to the toilet, I think it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, when I wiped there was blood, and so I thought, oh, this is the bloody show, exciting, this might mean something's happening. But then I also knew that that could happen and then you might not go into labour for like days or even a week later, so I wasn't too hopeful when I saw it, but I also went to bed a little bit like anxious, and I continued to get up and down in the night and like continued to check it to make sure that it was still happening or how much blood I'd lost and things like that. So the next time I went to the toilet, again about 2 hours later, because I managed to doze off slightly, I went to the toilet, but the last time I went I didn't turn the light on, because if I do that then I would never get back to sleep. But this time I did, because I wanted to make sure that it was just kind of like periody blood, if that makes sense. That's how it was described to me by my midwife, and how like other people have told me that it's like. So when I went to the toilet, I also noticed that as well as kind of blood within like the mucousy stuff, because by that point every time I wiped there was like your mucus plug, you lose it, so it's like a snotty kind of consistency that's like dischargey and stuff, which is gross. But I was told that the blood would be like within that, and it would be that but bloody. But when I wiped, as well as that, there was also fresh blood. And just for me, I knew that that was probably normal, but I also thought I'm under consultant care, because my blood levels were really low, my platelet levels was really low, and I just thought I better just ring them up, let them know. If they tell me to like, if they just tell me that's normal, great. I just didn't want to not ring up, and then if something were to happen, then I would just kick myself. So it was about 7 o'clock in the morning, I rang up the delivery suite and I just told them what had happened, and that as well as having the blood within like the mucus stuff, there was also fresh blood, and I didn't know if that was normal or not. And she said it was, but because of the fact that I'm under care because of my bloods, it was best to go in and just get it checked out. So I rang Rich up at work, which got him so excited, and I wish it was more dramatic. I wish I started having contractions and rang him, because I feel like it would have been a bit more exciting. But I rang him up because they said to come in to the hospital for 9 o'clock, and he would finish work normally at 7:45, but I just thought I can't bear to just leave it, like I needed to let him know. So I rang him up at work and just asked him to come home. It was only like 20 minutes before he was scheduled to leave anyway, so they didn't mind that too much. So he came home. I think I had like a bath and just got ready because I just didn't want to think about it too much. And then we went to the hospital and they advised me on the phone to put a pad in. When I went to the hospital, that was kind of looked at, and they also asked me to, they also asked me to pee in like the kind of tube thing that they normally, that you take to your midwife appointments. But just before I went there, I peed like in nervousness at the hospital anyway, so I really struggled to actually go to the toilet. And the midwife that we saw there was like, oh no, that's just your bloody show, like I don't know why you was told to come in. So I was like, right, okay. She just said, go home, chill out, hopefully this is the start of something. And I had a consultant appointment that day at 1:30. She just said, keep an eye on how things are going, continue to go to that appointment. And throughout that time, ever since I started bleeding, I started having like period like pains. And she said that that could mean that I'm in early labour. It might just be that my contractions are starting but very, very mildly. And she said, you know, what they feel like really early on, so if they get worse, then you know exactly what to look out for, and you know how they feel now as a comparative. So I was like, okay, fine. So we went home a bit like, I kind of thought it would be something, I knew it was just a bloody show, and I kind of knew that, and I knew that we weren't going to go into hospital and have a baby or anything. Like, we didn't even take our hospital bags. But I was just worried, so I was pleased that we went in just to get it double checked. So we did that, and then we came home. Yeah, is that what happened? And then at 1:30 that day, I had a consultant appointment. So I went back to the hospital and I saw my consultant and I told him what had happened. That morning they took my bloods for that appointment because she said, while you're here, we can get your platelet levels more accurate. And during that appointment, it was really quick. My platelet levels continued to decrease, and he basically said to me that had I scheduled a midwife appointment for the week after. I said no, not yet, and he just said make an appointment and ask to have the membrane sweep to get things going. But he basically said that I wouldn't be induced because of my platelet levels, so fingers crossed that this is the start of something. Might not be, could be kind of just the start, and then, you know, you could have her in like 2 weeks time. So I was like, bloody hell. So I came out of that appointment. I went to McDonald's coming home and got myself a milkshake, came home. Rich was then awake, and we didn't really know what to do. We just kind of were waiting around at home, just chilling out. That night we were like, let's get a Chinese, because that was our due date. It was the 6th of December. So it was our actual due date, or her due date. So we just said, let's get a Chinese for dinner and celebrate her due date even though she's not here, just to get our mind off things. So we had a Chinese, which was lovely. I wanted to get like a spicy dish to get things going, but I also don't like spicy food. So I got like the mildest chili beef thing, which was lovely, but we had that. And that evening, the pains that I were having, like the period pains, got more and more intense. But at no point were they like too bad. Like, I downloaded a contractions timer because I just wanted to know how frequently they were definitely coming in waves, but they weren't too intense. So I downloaded a contractions timer because I just thought it'd be interesting to see how often they were coming, and they were so infrequent. And even at one point, I like googled what happens if your contractions just stop, because whilst we had dinner, they like completely stopped, didn't they? Oh, so yeah, they had completely stopped, and I was just so worried, and I thought, I've just had this like excitement and hope that something was starting, and then I thought they had completely stopped, and I was just so underwhelmed, and I just thought this is going to be a long process to when we meet her. So we had the Chinese, we watched a film, and then suddenly they picked back up again, and they were definitely like more intense, but nothing I couldn't really handle at that point. So I continued using the contractions timer just to like make sure that I knew how frequent they were. And then that night, it's almost like someone just pressed an on switch. We were about to go to bed. Rich was like, hopefully this is the start of something, but let's see if we can get some sleep, if you can sleep through them. And then if something happens over the next coming days, then at least you've had a really good night's sleep in preparation. So I thought that's a really good idea. So we went to bed, I think it was about 11 o'clock at night. And as soon as I got into bed, they intensified like tenfold. And I just could not sleep. I couldn't even lay down. I was in so much pain. I had to sit up on the bed, and then because Rich had been at work before, I said to him, you continue getting sleep, I'll let you know if they get worse. I thought I'll run myself a bath, hopefully that will help with the pain, because that normally helps when I have like period pains and stuff. So I ran myself a bath, I got in that was so painful. So I got back out, but every time I was having a contraction, I had to like stop, and like whatever I was doing, I just had to stop, breathe through it. I started the timer, stopped the timer, and then suddenly they were so frequent. So as soon as I got out the bath, I just put some like pajamas back on, and I was trying to continue to breathe through these contractions, and I noticed that they were getting more and more frequent, more and more intense, and it got to a point where they were like 5 minutes apart and lasting for about a minute, which is what you're advised to call the hospital if they reach that point. So I went into the bedroom, I woke Rich up, and I said, I can't sleep, these are just getting so intense, I think this is it. Can you ring the hospital and let them know that they're this frequent? So he was like, yeah, absolutely. Came down, rang the hospital, and then they said, to ring back when I was having 3 contractions every 10 minutes that lasted a minute, and I just thought, oh my god, I thought that having them that close together would help get us just into the hospital. But they said to ring back then, so I was like, okay. We wrote it out for about an hour and 20 minutes. It got to a point that they got that frequent, and I was downstairs, and I remember just being in the kitchen and just said to Rich, ring them back and tell them that I'm not coping with the pain. I was in so much pain, and I just thought, if this is what early kind of contractions feel like, considering they were only that intense for about 3 to 4 hours, I think, if even that, not that long at all. I just remember saying to Rich, how am I going to deal with this? Like, if this is it in the early stages, what on earth am I going to be like when they get more intense? So I just said, ring them up, tell them I'm not coping with the pain, tell them that I'm having 3 every 10 minutes that last about a minute, and that I really want to go into the hospital. So he rang them up, and as he did, I went to the toilet, and I came back out, and then I stood in the kitchen just waiting for him to get off the phone. And as I did, I felt like a trickle. And I thought, oh God, maybe I've just peed myself again. And I thought, well, no, because I've never, I don't think it would feel like that. And it just felt different. So I was like, maybe this is my waters. I didn't know. But the hospital had advised us to go in if I wanted to be in. And because they were that frequent, they advised that was the best place to be, because I wanted a hospital bath. So I said to Rich, right, I put a pad on, we put a towel in the car for me to sit on in case they were my waters, and we went to the hospital, and we were about to go, and then we got a call from the midwife, and they just said, don't go the way that we were going to go, because a tree had been knocked down because it was such bad weather that night. And this was at about 4 o'clock half 3 in the morning. So about half 3 in the morning, we started to set off to the hospital. And in that moment, I just wanted to be in the hospital. I wanted to be in the right place. I thought I'd be nervous about going to the hospital, and I thought it would slow things down. But in my mind, I was like, just get me there. Let's get her out. Let's have this over. So we were going to the hospital. Yeah. And on our way there, Rich was trying to make conversation with me because he was so tired. I mean, so was I. But for him, he was trying to make conversation. For me, I was not talking to him at all, because I just wanted to breathe through the contractions. Exactly, just like that. Just like that. So I wanted to just breathe through the contractions in the car, and I used the techniques that the Hypnobirth book teaches you by Catherine Graves, which, by the way, freaking godsend. I recommend you all read that book, even if you read it and you don't take anything away from it but the breathing techniques, because they just helped me so much on our way to hospital, because that car journey was like the worst part. So we were going towards the hospital and we finally got there. It was about a 35-minute drive, which was the longest 35 minutes of my life. I had to close my eyes because I felt sick. And so we got to hospital, we went to the delivery suite, and obviously by that point it was about 4 o'clock in the morning that we got there, and we were given a delivery room and they asked to examine me, and I was just like, yeah, do what you need to do. They obviously just asked you to take off like your bottoms, keep your top on, and basically they'll examine you. So I was like, yeah, absolutely, let's see how we were. But Rich, before we left, Rich was like, should I let our parents know we're going to hospital? I said, no. I said, I think they'll send us back, because I just knew of people that would go to hospital like 1 centimetre dilated and then be told to go home, ride it out and come back. So I was like, don't wake them up, it's so early. My mum and dad had work and things like that. I didn't want to disturb people. So we got to hospital, I was examined, and she said, well, good news, you're not going home because you're fully dilated. And I was like, what the actual fuck? I was relieved because obviously I wasn't coping with the pain very well, and that's why. I must have started to dilate the day before, because it did just come on like a switch, but no surprise. But I couldn't believe that I was fully dilated. I felt like Superwoman in that moment, I'm not going to lie to you, because by that point you can't really get any more pain relief other than gas and air, because you're fully dilated. You don't need any more intervention to get to that stage. So I was like, right, great. They gave me some gas and air, which definitely took the edge off. It didn't numb anything, it didn't help too much, but it definitely lifted the edge, which is all that I needed in that moment, because I was so tired and it was so painful. I needed something, so that definitely helped. And then they basically said, your body will start to involuntarily push. So I continued having really intense contractions, which, no surprise, I was fully dilated. And I was just riding it out, having gas and air, until about, I think it was 5:20. So until about 5:20 in the morning, I was just having gas and air, riding it out. Oh, and as well, when I got to hospital, they confirmed that my waters had already broken, which was amazing, because I heard having your waters broken like manually is really painful. So I was delighted that my waters had already broken. So I was in like the right position. I thought, bloody hell, maybe this will actually be easier than I thought it would be. It wasn't. So she basically said your body will start to tell you when to push, and it was, I think it's about 5:20 in the morning that I started saying to her, like, your body just starts pushing, it's really weird. I kind of said to her, like, I think I'm starting to push, and she was like, that's amazing. They take off the gas and air at that point, which I was gutted about, but she just said, basically push as much as you can with every contraction. So we started doing that, and we continued doing that for a while, and then like a head midwife, I think, or someone who was in charge of the ward came in and was telling me to like push harder and stuff. And at that point I was like, I am pushing so hard, like you don't even realise. And I think I was doing 4 pushes per contraction. I was trying to do just 3 because the 4th one was so painful. But they encourage you to get as much pushing in a contraction as possible. So we got to about 4 pushes per contraction, which was knackering. No one tells you how knackering it is, and also no one tells you what it's like to push a baby out. I was always told it's like trying to go to do a poo, basically. It wasn't. It feels so different. It's not at all like that. It's so weird. So I was pushing and pushing and pushing. They then said you need to push a bit more, because I had been pushing for quite a while at that point. I think they let you push for like an hour or a bit. And then a doctor came in to assess what I was doing, and he said, no, give her a little bit longer, because I was doing really well, and they said I was pushing well, but there was just no progress, like she hadn't basically dropped down any further. So a doctor came in and said, no, give her a little bit longer. So I had a bit more longer, and then a different doctor came in, I think this was probably about another hour later, and said, right, I need to have a look, see what's going on, because you should have made more progress by now. So he came in and examined me and basically said that her head was at a really awkward position. So she was, I think she was lying back, so I don't know whether she was back to back, I can't remember what they said because I was so tired. But her head was like at an angle, instead of like laying back, it was like at an angle. So this doctor basically said, right, I'm going to try and move her head, I'm going to try and rotate it. Fuck me, that was the worst part of this whole story, because they put their hands in and they try and turn her head. Obviously she hadn't dropped that much, so it was pretty high up. And to turn her, he had to do that whilst I was pushing and having a contraction. And that was the most painful thing I've ever experienced in my life. He was trying to turn up, and he was telling me to push through the pain. But obviously I hadn't had any pain relief other than gas and air, so I could feel everything. I just couldn't do it. Like, I could not push to how he wanted because I could feel him trying to move her and the pain was unbearable. So I was obviously clamming up a little bit because I didn't want to experience that pain, and it was so painful. And then they're telling you to push harder, and I was so tired, and I was really giving it my 100%. So to be told to push even harder was I just couldn't, it wasn't progressing anywhere, and I was just, every time I was pushing, I think I was getting more and more knackered. So with that, he basically said she wasn't coming out anytime soon. I'd been pushing for a very, very long time. Now, with my platelet levels being so low, they said that I couldn't have I think it's ventouse, where it's like they have a suction cup and try and help her come out. And so therefore my only option was forceps. However, with her head positioning, he didn't think we'd be able to use forceps because obviously it would clamp her face instead of her head. And he said, obviously we're not going to do that. So at that point he said, we might need to take you to theatre. So either you may need to have a C-section, or we could try the ventouse, but I think they'd obviously kind of cut you open a bit more, and they wouldn't do it to the extent or the intensity that they would ordinarily, because they didn't want to cut her in case she had my bloods and had the low platelet levels too. So at that point I started to panic a little bit because no one wants to go into theatre. But then also I was just so tired. I'd been pushing for so long at this point. I just had enough. I just didn't know what else to do. They tell you to push and push and give it your all. But when you haven't really slept properly for 48 hours, and she's obviously in a bit of an awkward position, and because of her head positioning, because of her head positioning, she wasn't going anywhere. I was like, fine, whatever. They said they'd assess me and let me know my best options, but with that, the anaesthesiologist comes in and tells you your options and tells you the side effects and stuff, and you have to sign consent forms. So I signed 2. That was a C-section and a assisted delivery in theatre. Hello. So they took me to theatre. Rich had to put some scrubs on and had to wait outside whilst they assessed me. They gave me the spinal as well. I obviously so didn't want to be in theatre. No one does, do they? No one wants to be in theatre. Everyone wants to have a more natural birth if they can. But I went into theatre. They gave me the spinal, which just took all the pain away instantly. And it was just, to be honest, the best feeling after being in so much pain and being so tired. So they assessed me and they basically just said, you need to have a C-section. That's our decision. We're not going to try and ventouse her out. That's going to be the best and safest option for both of you. So I think again in that moment you just accept that it is what it is and you're not going to change it. And again in that moment I just wanted her out. I just didn't care how it was done. I just wanted them to do it. So they also said there that they might need to put me to sleep depending on how my body reacts to the spinal, because if you have low platelet levels it can affect it quite bad and your body might not react well to that. So I had that as a potential as well, but luckily I didn't have to be put to sleep. If they had to put me to sleep, then Rich wouldn't have been allowed in the room. So they assessed me, they made that decision, they checked that everything was okay, then they went to get Rich, who then sat next to me and held my hand. Then they basically said, right, they're going to start the C-section. So they did that. And then she was born at 9:20 in the morning, wasn't you? She's opened her eyes now. Hello. It's because I'm talking about you, isn't it? So she was born at 9:20 in the morning on the 7th of December via C-section, which of course wasn't ideal. I wanted this like natural water birth, but it was what it was, and I'm just so happy that she was healthy. And so yeah, so that was basically how she came into the world. I then came out of theatre. I think I remember looking at the clock and asking them if that was a time at like 10:05, and then I was done shortly after. Whilst I was having the C-section, I went really cold and shivery, and obviously I didn't know what was going on because I was so out of it, but Rich basically said that I lost a lot of blood. I started shivering, which went alongside my blood loss, and I actually did hemorrhage as well, but luckily I didn't need a blood transfusion. They had blood on standby in case I did, because they thought I was definitely high risk at needing one. Hello! So, yeah, I didn't need one, thank God, but I did lose a lot of blood. And yeah, I was shivery, and Rich managed to, well, they don't cut the cord, he like trimmed the cord because they obviously get her out and then they take out the placenta and stuff and then they stitch you up. But yeah, it was the weirdest thing, and it all happened so quickly. The decision to go into theatre and then have the emergency C-section happened so quickly, and it was the craziest thing ever because I didn't think it would go in that direction, but it obviously did, and it was what it was. I am going to speak more about my recovery and stuff in my postpartum updates because that definitely covers a majority of week 1 and how I was feeling and stuff like that, but I wanted to just share with you how she came into the world because I found these videos strangely reassuring, even though I was so anxious. And it's one of those things, even if we don't want to, we are watching labour and delivery stories because it's other people's experiences. But for me, and I'll be completely honest, the C-section was probably the worst case scenario for me. But looking back, I'd probably do it again. If I had another one, I would definitely consider having an elected C-section because it was like, yeah, looking back, I'd definitely consider having an elected C-section because, in all honesty, if you take out the pain of having the contractions and how anxious you get, especially when people are saying that it needs to potentially happen, it is scary. And I think if you had control of the situation, then it wouldn't be scary at all. I know that I've done it and it wasn't bad at all. Like I said, I'll talk more about the recovery and stuff in coming videos, but I found that the process, despite not being how I wanted it to go, was really positive. At the end of the day, I was absolutely fine. She was absolutely fine. She was happy and healthy, and all throughout the pushing and her head getting lodged and stuff, never did her heart rate go down. She was never in discomfort or like they were never worried about her. They always checked their heart rate and stuff. But they said it was strange because she was never in discomfort, which is really bizarre because normally when they're kind of lodged in a weird position, naturally their heart rate, they're going to be more stressed, their heart rate goes down, but she never did, which was amazing. And yeah, they pulled her out, she screamed right away, and me and Rich just looked at each other like, oh my God. It was weird because obviously when I had her, you don't see her straight away because they do the checks and stuff and wrap her up and whatever. They asked if I wanted skin to skin and I said yes. However, in that moment I was shivering. I had like a heated blanket put on me because I was getting so cold. And so they asked if I wanted skin to skin when she came out, and I was just like, no. Like I was so just almost like overwhelmed with the situation. But Rich held her, I could see her, and even just thinking about it now, like it wells you up a little bit. But it was just the best feeling, like knowing that she was here and she was safe and it was over as well, because, oh God, you're making me upset. Because obviously, like, you get so anxious. And it's just such a nice feeling to know that they're okay, and it's, God, what am I getting upset for? You know, it was really positive because we were both okay. And really, like, I was so lucky because it happened quite quickly. I wasn't in like early labour for like a week or anything. I had the bloody show the night before, and then the night after I went to hospital, and then there I was. And I think as soon as they're born, literally what's going on, as soon as they're born, it just takes away any anxiety that you have. Jesus, put yourself together. Like, I was so worried about having to stay in the hospital, and I knew that by having a C-section that meant that I had to stay. But as soon as you see her, like, everything like that just goes away. And then you're just so, like, you're so over, like, for me, I'm not upset, like, I'm just thinking back, and like, it was just such an amazing experience. And I never thought I'd understand why people say, like, as soon as you have a baby and you see them, all the pain and that goes away, but it really does. And it's amazing because I never thought it would. I never imagined how anxious I was at the end of pregnancy would disappear, but it makes you just think, bloody hell, like, this is amazing. And I think a lot of people that have C-sections feel less of a woman because they don't deliver, like, naturally. But no way, like, having a C-section is so, it requires so much strength as well. And quite a lot of people, like I did, went through the natural process. It just didn't work out. So, yeah, it was kind of, obviously there was a lot more recovery time with C-sections. But she was born on the 7th of December, which was amazing because even with like time in hospital and stuff, we still came out and I was recovered and stuff by Christmas. And actually, afterwards I've had such a good recovery, and I've been really surprised about how quickly I've recovered, how quickly I can do everything, be mobile, drive, and all of those key turning points I'm going to share with you in my postpartum updates. Because, you know, I always thought having a C-section means that you're no good to anyone for like 6 to 8 weeks, but actually I recovered so quickly, and you know, it wasn't bad at all. And like, if you're watching this and you're worried about having to have an emergency C-section, or, you know, it's a possibility for everyone really, don't be worried. Like, it was absolutely fine. And yeah, so that is the story of how this little one came into the world. And just, it did definitely make me think that if I were to have another one, I'd be tempted to have an elected C-section. You know, better the devil you know. And also for me, the anxiety that I had at the end of pregnancy, like waiting for her to come and waiting for things to happen, was so much worse than actually giving birth. So yeah, don't worry if that is to be your fate. Please don't worry. And through that, I had like cannulas put in. I had to have a catheter put in as well. And it's not glamorous, but as long as she was fine, that's fine. And I also forgot to mention as well that she was £9.3, which is a big chunky baby. She looks massive now, but it's because she's 4 weeks old. But yeah, she was £9.3, which is a big size. Everyone's like, oh, that's such a good weight. And I was like, you mean that's big? So no wonder why her head got lodged, because I think her head circumference were like 37 centimetres, which is huge. But yeah, I was just so happy it was over. And yeah, you know, it all went completely smoothly. And as soon as she was here, for me, it didn't matter. The process really didn't matter. She was here, she was fine. And then as soon as we went back into delivery suite, my mum and dad came and made sure I was okay and she was okay, and Rich was too. But even just, obviously, because you're then bed bound after having a C-section, Rich kind of changed her nappy and put clothes on her for the first time. And as soon as you see him do that, like, God, I'm going to be set off again. But it makes you feel like so much more in love with them. And it was just the most overwhelming day. And it really was the best day of my life, despite the fact that I had to have like major surgery to get her out. It didn't matter. Like, even looking back now, I'd look back and I think it was so positive. And yeah, I'm sorry that this video is going to be super long, but I wanted to just share everything with you, especially for those that have followed my journey as well. Yeah, it was a crazy kind of couple of days. But all in all, it's been amazing, and 4 weeks on, we're feeling amazing too. But like I said, I'm going to be sharing weekly breakdowns of how it's all gone, because it's been a crazy couple of weeks, hasn't it? Yeah, it has been crazy, but I can't wait to share that with you. Give this video a like if you've enjoyed this video, and don't forget to subscribe if you've enjoyed this video too. And if you're looking forward to my postpartum updates, don't forget to subscribe, because then you won't miss any videos. If you put the notification bell on as well, then you'll be notified when those videos are uploaded. And yeah, that's kind of it from us, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.